Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Visualizing Progress in UPV. My name is Daniel Dolinsky and I am the lead business process architect with CI Experts. So this webinar is an update session for the webinar we had about 10 months ago. So it will show you some new features in here. It will take about 25 minutes. So mainly 20 minutes for the presentation and 5 minutes for questions and answers. What would we like to discuss today? So what is the 4D system? Who is using it typically? How does it fit in your infrastructure? What are typical use cases? How can I link UPV objects to the Primavera P6 activities? And what are possible alternatives to the 4D system? And of course, the question is, how does it look like? What are the results of the 4D system? So who is using 4D system? The 4D system allows users of P6 to link the P6 activities to 3D items in UPV and to visualize the progress data from P6 in UPV using colors and transparencies. So since last year, we have added a functionality to create animation files for UniversalPlantViewer. So since version 6.1 of UPV, any UPV installation can open up and run these export files from the 4D system. So typical users are of the 4D system, the owner operators and EPCs, and they're the P6 users. So P6 users who are handling the activity planning. And on the other side, with these export files, engineers, workers, managers, and so on, who want to see this progress visualization. So how does it fit into your infrastructure? So let's just assume you have a Primavera P6 server up and running. You would need to have the P6 integration API and usually, of course, a P6 client to have a Gantt chart and have a look on the things going on in the P6 server. Then from CI Experts, you would have CI Experts UniversalPlantViewer and the API module. And the 4D system fits in between P6 and the API module. So we are running a web service and the graphical front end of the 4D system. And from there, we can create the animation files for UPV 6.1 and the newer versions of UPV. So as you can see, it's a quite complex infrastructure. So what we also are offering is that we can provide you with a customized version of the tool. So in this case, it's getting easier. We just have a third-party system here that has the 4D data. So that could be just an Excel file, for example, a report coming out of Primavera or MS Project. And then we would communicate using the 4D system with this third-party data and create the animation files directly. So in this case, you don't have a graphical user interface. It's really just taking the data from the third-party system or from Primavera and converting these input data to the CI Experts UniversalPlantViewer animation files. So that's probably easier to implement, so you don't have to talk to the admins for your Primavera installation. And it's also something you can run overnight, so you have always an update on the current data from your 4D system. Now, what are the typical use cases? So we have the use case that there might be a 3D model, but no P6 activities. So in this case, you can use the 4D system to create activities from the 3D model. So this means that you're able to add additional activity items in P6, and these activity items are created out of the 3D data. Case B is that you already have P6 activities, but no 3D model yet. So in this case, you can create so-called rule files, little JSON files, that look for 3D model items that would fit your activities. So for example, you can have a rule that grabs all the items on a certain pipeline, and then it would add all these items to this activity in P6. So if somebody is adding additional valves or additional items to the pipeline, they get automatically added to the activities that are linked to this pipeline. And case C is that there are P6 activities and 3D model items. So you already have a Gantt chart with a lot of activities, and you have 3D model items in place. So it helps you to link between the existing activities and the 3D model items. So how can you do these links? So we have 3 methods available. The first one is you can select and assign the items in UPV individually to activities on the Gantt chart. So you select some objects in UPV, you select the activity on the Gantt chart, and you click on assign individually, and then these objects get added to the activity in P6. The second method is that you can use the JSON rule files. They will filter for the items in UPV, and with the result, they will add them to the items they belong to in the P6 database. So that can be used to either update the data there or to really create new activities by rule. And the new method since last year is that you can load links directly from Excel. So you could start even with an empty P6 project, and in the Excel file you just have basically names for activities, then the parent activities, start and end date and progress. And on the side of the UPV, you would have some filter conditions to combine the objects you want to assign to these activities. So with the Excel file, you can easily create the structure in P6, or you can even use, as I said, the customized version of 4D System to convert these Excel files to the animation files in UPV. So here are the 3 possible alternatives with the 4D systems here at CA Experts. So we have the out-of-the-box 4D system for Oracle Primavera P6. So that's the big infrastructure slide we've seen. Then we've got the customized 4D system, which would just import files from Excel and create the animation files. And there is another solution where UPV is used as a 3D viewer inside of Oracle Unifier. So if you are using Oracle Unifier, that might be also an option to use UPV inside the Unifier environment as a 3D viewer. Now let's go to the live demo. So first of all, I would like to show you the result we have in here. So that's our standard demo project. So you might remember this from UniversalPlantViewer or the UniversalPlantViewer demos. And in my project tree over here, I've got this animations folder, and I can go to this 4D system view. So it's jumping to this view here, and I can open up a 4D system animation. So this file or this part of the tree over here comes out of the 4D system. So when I open this up, I get this additional bar down here, which allows me to show the progress that is stored in this animation. So let's just open up the calendar over here, and perhaps I can jump to the clock. So we have this clock, and this clock and calendar is synchronized to this scroll bar down here. So when I scroll the scroll bar, the clock is moving, and as you can see, the items over here, they get animated. So here we have a blue color to show the user that certain items have to be, for example, added or cleaned or built or whatever at a certain time. So I move the slider and I have this animation up here. And it's not like a animation you might know from MPEG files or so. So it's really animating the 3D model. So I can zoom in, zoom out, highlight objects, colorize them, remove them, and so on. So it's the real functionality of the UniversalPlantViewer, but on top of the standard functionality, we have this slider here, the calendar, and the timestamp. And for example, I can also run this as an animation. So for example, I can set this to 8 hours per second. I jump back to the start here, and then I press the play button. And now this is getting animated. So the idea is that using one of these 4D system tools, you can convert your data out of systems like P6 into these animation files and store them on a server or push them on mobile devices so that people on site can just open up these files either from the tree here or from the hard drive or from an email, and then they know what they have to do on a certain date or how the plant should look like on site at a specific time. So that's the idea. You really push these 4D animations to the people on site. And the file size is quite small. So usually it's just a few hundred kilobytes because we don't have the geometry data in these animation files. It's just the information, what items have to have what specific color at a certain time. So these files are very compact, so you can easily squeeze a couple of animation files into an email and send them on site. So this animation functionality is built in any version or any release of UPV since 6.1. So it's included in the free tool. So anybody using UPV can open up these files and work with these animation files. Now let's have a look at the Primavera installation and how we are storing the information there. So in here, you see we have this Gantt chart. So this is containing a small architectural project. So we have a lot of activities in here, start date, end date, progress, and so on. And the way UniversalPlantViewer is storing the data in Primavera is that we create these so-called notebook topics. So it's basically a big blob in the database, in the P6 database. And in here we store these items. So each item has a unique name. And then this is a kind of a JSON blob. So in this case, we have lamp 14 activity. So there should be somebody on site installing a lamp 15. And these 3 UIDs down here, that are items in UniversalPlantViewer. So this text tells our tool that these 3 items are connected to the activity lamp 14. As you can see, we also have a rule and a selections node here. So in rule, we could store conditions. So for example, a condition to collect all pipes starting with a certain name or all equipment items of a certain area and so on. So that would be stored in a rule. And then in selection, we could store the UIDs that were selected when the rule was applied. So we could have, for example, here area or a unit in the plant in selections, and then a condition to select all pipelines. So in this case, we can rerun the rule based on the selection, and the result could be different to these 3 items over here. So it could add today 500 items, tomorrow 500 additional ones, and then somebody is deleting all pipelines. So in a couple of days from now, we would have a result of exactly 0 items in here. So that is something dynamic, so you can really work with your 3D model, and this tool can help you to update the information from the 3D model here in the database. In the 4D system, we have a direct link from the P6 client to the 4D system, so we can read in and show the Gantt chart and create these linkages as shown on the PowerPoint slides. So let's start this up now. So this is now opening up a local project, and it's connecting to the database. So as you can see, we have a cleanup, gardening, roadworks. So there are these 3 items up here, and I have a direct connection. So if I rename this and I go over here to P6 and I press F5, it's really renaming the activity over there. So that's a reason why we have the second method, because some admins, they don't like to have our tool connect to P6 and do modifications over here. So in this case, you would just read in the Excel file and then export the animation. So now let's have a look at the tool itself. So we have the Gantt chart down here. So that's basically what you see in the client of P6. I can select items here and run an animation. So that's a preview of the output files that I can create for UPV. I can save the animation using this button. So that creates the output file. And now the real question is, how can I connect the items in the UPV model to the items here in the Gantt chart? And that's done using the Assignments tab. So I can either select items here in UPV and items in the activities, and then I can press Assign individually. So it's really just connecting these items. I can create these JSON rule files. So if you are interested in the files, I could send you a sample file, or we can have a small web session to discuss the content. So the rule file will just look at the items here in UPV, collect them, and then attach them to the defined activities over there. So that's this area here, assign by rule. And of course, I can use import assignments, which reads in an Excel file and then creates either the structure automatically or attaches the items from the Excel file automatically to the existing activities. So that's the way it works. So the hard way is to select all these items and assign individually. The standard way would be to use the rule file. And with the Excel import, you can either run this overnight, and you're not dependent on P6 with this customized development that we have here. So how do you connect to Primavera? So that's quite easy. You just need to have a remote address of our own Primavera web service. And this web service is talking to the Primavera P6 API. So you just need to have a user and password here. So that's our web service password and username. And here I have selected the Primavera P6 project. So not too many buttons. So I think it's quite a clean user interface. And so it's easy to create these connections. And the typical user would be either a P6 user or an engineer who knows a little bit about P6. So it's not too much documentation that is needed for this tool. But as I said, if it's an issue to connect to P6 directly, we have the solution to read in the Excel output out of P6 or output out of MS Project or other tools, and then we could just create the animation files directly.